What is up, YouTube? It is Sharp7 here once again, and this time it's another vlog. My girlfriend and I went to the Safe House, as you see here. It's a restaurant in downtown Milwaukee. They have a really cool decor. As you see here, here's another part of the Safe House, and there's a bar right there. But it's located right in the heart of downtown Milwaukee, as you see on the map here. Also, was showing you guys those photos because I actually forgot to get some video inside of the Safe House, but you'll see later in this video, my girlfriend and I, we went on the boat ride in Milwaukee. Without further ado, hope you guys enjoy another vlog on the channel. Okay, we're having lunch at the Safe House. Looks so cool in here. I got a turkey sandwich with avocado, Swiss cheese, smoked pepper bacon, and then French fries. Peter's getting hers coming up, and then we're gonna go to the Icarus.
Chicken and cheese sauce.
So you got what? Mac and cheese with grilled chicken and cheese sauce?
Yeah.
Ooh, that looks so good. It looks so cool here. We're like in this little area here. Safe House, Milwaukee. So we just got done eating at the Safe House. We couldn't really record much in there because it was dark and there was a lot of stuff.
We're walking back to the car. We're gonna go find a parking spot down by the boat, and then we'll catch up with you guys when we get on the boat.
Yeah, we're gonna go down in the boat ride. Vita's taking me there. I bought Vita lunch at the Safe House. Downtown Milwaukee, here we go.
Yep.
So we're walking back to the car. This is the Pabst Theater in Milwaukee. It looks so cool. And we're going in the River Center. Babe. So we're in the River Center. The River Center. We're going back to our car, so.
I didn't use the
Really? Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, we went through the River Center here.
12, 11, or 10?
I don't know.
Okay, 11.
So we're in the elevator.
We're going down.
I don't know. We're in the elevator.
We're going down?
So we're going back to our car now.
So did we go down or up?
I think we went down.
Oh.
So we're going back to our car now. And yeah, we gotta pay to park. So I think 1 to 2 hours it was like, I don't know, $13 or something, but that's pretty good. So we just parked.
What's your license plate?
There's the Spectrum News building for Wisconsin. So we're headed to the boat area now. This is downtown Milwaukee. There's the boats.
Hey, come on, babe.
There's the Milwaukee River.
Come on, babe.
We're coming. Looks so awesome over here. So we're headed on the boat. Here we go. Here we go. This looks so cool, babe.
You are free to move around the vessel, of course.
Babe, are we on the boat?
Yeah.
There's something you can see. We have a wonderful historian narrator to tell you about the things we're going to be seeing as we make our way down.
Wow.
Mappy.
We'll head out to the link today.
That looks so cool. Wow.
Once again, welcome aboard.
Hello everyone. My name is Leif. I'm going to be your narrator for today's tour. I am the big guy in front of the boat in the straw hat and dragon shirt. I'm very easy to find out. That's important.
There's also other boats behind us over there.
Will you remember this is that important left with the same number of letters? Will you I tell you that the tour is going to be a real blast. Alright folks, let's get started. So, one neighborhood called
Yeah, we got a bar here.
It's not called this because it's dear to our hearts. It is the passenger ship your goods from
Life
other
jackets.
parts of the world. And before that, in the mid-19th century, this was the German immigrant neighborhood of Milwaukee. And then one of the buildings we're going to see here on our port side, the older historical homes were built by four of Milwaukee's
Over there.
population. And but just past that big tan building. That is Milwaukee City Hall. 4 years later, it became the tallest habitable
Babe,
building.
that's where you can rent a pontoon.
Really, babe?
And go
It's not even the
in the
tallest
lake.
habitable
Wow.
building in the
That
world.
one.
That looks cool.
Ahead of us, the State Street Bridge. State Street Bridge was built in 1924, and it's the first bridge built in I-towards. The way this bridge works is that there are large geochemical weights on either side. These weights are dropped slowly, and each one is attached to the peak of the bridge, which is the part that goes up. This means that all you need to do to open it up is to slowly drop that counterweight, and to close it, and just put that counterweight back in position. Because of the careful balance that goes into designing a vestibule-style bridge, it's actually easier and less energy intensive to open the bridge than it is to close it. Because to close it, you have to force that block back into position, gravity against you. Though, on a personal note, I am usually more concerned with bridges opening than I am with closing in my overview. Ahead of us is Gilbert Avenue Bridge. Gilbert Avenue Bridge is built in
I want to try and go upstairs.
as you can see, it's
Wanna?
fancier than the last bridge. It's got the towers down at Port City Hall.
Okay, we're gonna try to go upstairs.
Upstairs.
We're gonna go upstairs. Here we go.
Some of this of the United States was forefront in the minds of many architectural and urban planning specialists in the world. And so, City Beautiful, let's make the city more beautiful and thus make people enjoy it more, was one of the things they came up with. It's something we think about a lot today. The first place to use pulverized coal instead of larger lumps, and that turned out to be actually a lot more efficient. Specifically what we're looking at now on our Milwaukee Powerhouse Theater. They have been working on this for quite some time. They renovated the entryway, they worked on the theater, they redid the windows here, and so notably the Milwaukee Repertory, which we already mentioned, and there's also, as part of that, the Pat's Theater, which is just on the other side of the United Street Power Station, named after Captain Frederick. I had to wait here for a moment. All of these bridges are operated by human beings. None of them are automatic. However, there is not someone stationed at every single bridge. Instead, each operator operates multiple bridges.
Okay.
The one operators that operates one of the other bridges that we go under on our tour today. And for safety reasons, as well as for flow of traffic, you gotta close a bridge entirely, make sure it's all set before you can start to open the next one. This is, by the way, a federal waterway. We don't pay a fee to open these bridges. There isn't a very hard specific schedule when they open and close. There needs to be some level of accessibility for boats larger than some of the small personal vessels that can go underneath these bridges. And so that's where the requests that the captains make via the radio come in. We do try to keep our schedule, though. We want to minimize the disruption to traffic as much as possible, maximize safety, and just make sure everything goes smooth. We just all want to get along. We like the bridge operators, they like us, and so it works out okay.
It's moving out.
So on our port side was Milwaukee's German immigrant neighborhood. That's a pretty famous part of Milwaukee history. Milwaukee was at one point referred to in the 19th century as the German Athens of America because the number of German immigrants was just so high and its impact on German culture in the U.S. was so heavy. But the thing about a lot of those German immigrants is that when they first came here, they spoke almost no English. Now, a local German immigrant and businessman named George Brumder realized that he could make a buck and help his fellow countrymen. Look on our starboard side, and you'll see that large gray building with the green domes at the top. That is the 1896 Germania building. And Mr. Brumder had it built to house, among other things, his German language newspaper, the first in Milwaukee. It was so successful that it actually outsubscribed the Milwaukee Journal, which was the English language newspaper at the time, if only for a little while. Now, today, this is not home to any sort of newspaper work, which is a little too bad. It has suffered the eventual fate of many a Milwaukee historic building, which is to say that it is now private residences. Coming up here on our port side is this large gray square building with these carvings above the main windows. It's the one that says First National Bank Building above the door. This is the First National Bank Building. It's built in 1914, and it's Milwaukee's first modern skyscraper. It was constructed by a man, an architect named Daniel Burnham. Burnham's a bit of a big name in the historic architecture field, as he is seen as the father of the modern skyscraper. He built many of the earliest in Chicago, and some here in Milwaukee as well. He was also one of the great champions of the City Beautiful movement, which we were discussing earlier. If you look on our starboard, you can see a statue of a duck right here next to the bridge. This is Gertie. She is our river mascot. She was discovered living underneath this bridge in 1945 during a little thing I like to call World War II. Distraught from the stresses of the war, a local reporter did an article on her in the newspaper, and she essentially became the 1945 equivalent of a viral animal video. Blew up. She became wildly popular, was moved to this large white building here on our starboard side, and eventually was immortalized as the river mascot to this day. By the way, this large white building is the Gimbels building. Now, the Gimbels family has had something at this location since 1887, but this is an early 20th century construction. This is a neoclassical building, which means it's supposed to look like ancient Greece or Rome, at least in its inspiration. And it was home for the longest time to the Gimbels department store. If you don't know what a department store is because you're too young, or because you don't watch too much period television like I do, think of it a bit like a Amazon that you can walk into, except with middle class and family. Also, you may have noticed that the bridges that we go under here, the ones in downtown, are not vestibule bridges. These are what are called vertical lift bridges. They go straight up. Now, these bridges date back to the 1960s. The Milwaukee River had a bit of a PR problem back then. Very few people wanted to spend time around it, as it had this reputation as a sort of old, run-down industrial river that nobody really had any use for anymore. And so the city wanted to draw people back to downtown Milwaukee, and so they had a contest for a new type of bridge for downtown. These vertical lifts are what won, and the idea was that they would be more streamlined and less industrial than the bridges that came before them, which were the Bastilles. And building these bridges was supposed to change how people thought about downtown Milwaukee. You can decide for yourself whether or not you think it worked. So coming up here on our starboard side, you're going to see a construction site. Now, we're going to talk all about this construction site on our way back upriver as we discuss the development and evolution of this part of the neighborhood. If we look past it, you'll see that large tan building. This is the 1875 Pritzlaff Hardware building. Pritzlaff Hardware was the largest hardware wholesaler in the Midwest at that time. It's also a great example of Milwaukee Cream City brick. See, when I first came here from Illinois, don't hold it against me, I thought that Cream City, Milwaukee's nickname, had to do with dairy, but it does not. Bricks made in Milwaukee in the 19th century often had a high sulfur content. This sulfur content turns the bricks a white cream color and gives Milwaukee the nickname that it has to this day, the Cream City. So if we look here on our port side, we can see the Milwaukee Historic 3rd Ward. Today, the 3rd Ward is one of the nicest, most upscale, and historically dense neighborhoods in the city of Milwaukee. But it used to be the commercial shipping hub for Milwaukee river trade. And it was that for all of the 19th and about half of the 20th century. Now, most of the buildings we see here on our port side are today factories or old warehouses and factories and docks and industrial buildings that have today been converted into apartments, condos, bars, condos, shops, condos, restaurants, and condos. We're going to discuss on our way back upriver how a neighborhood that in the 1850s had the nickname the Bloody Third ended up as what we see here right now. And speaking of the buildings of the 3rd Ward, check out that smaller looking one there on our port side now. It's an old tavern building, and it looks just a little bit crooked. Now, I have a theory as to why that building is crooked, though I can't say for sure. You see, Milwaukee's 3rd Ward and downtown are built on a swamp. I can't imagine building your big city on a swamp in Chicago. Excuse me. But that's what Milwaukee chose to do. And because of that, a lot of the buildings here in the 3rd Ward in downtown have to have specialized supports in the basement so they don't tip or sink. It's possible that that building didn't take as good care of its supports at one point in history as it should have. You know, some of the older buildings still have their wooden supports. They often have to remain submerged in some fashion as the cold water and lack of exposure to the air keeps those wooden posts from being able to rot away. Certainly a consideration when you're doing work here in the city of Milwaukee. So here off of our starboard bow, you can see this older looking metal bridge. This was a 1904 bobtail swing style bridge, and it still is to this day, you can say it was. This bridge, despite its advanced age, is still in use today. Amtrak, Canadian Pacific cross it every day. It's a railroad. And of note, bobtail swing bridges are actually rather rare, especially this far north of the United States. They open away from us at an angle to allow access to the river beyond. Now, if we were to go through there, we won't, but if we were, we would end up in what's called the Menominee River. There are 3 rivers that make up the Milwaukee waterway system. There is the Milwaukee, which is what we are on now, the Menominee to our starboard, and then the Kinnickinnick, or KK River, and we'll talk about that one when we get a little bit further south. I'll point it out when we get there. If you look on our port side, you can see that little red brick building there next to the bridge. This is station house number 15, and it was built in 1915. It's an old fireboat station for resupplying and refueling Milwaukee fireboats. Now, this is today private residences, and I'd love to live there, but I'd more realistically love to see how they've done it, what it looks like inside. It's a rather unconventional house, as you can imagine. I'm working up the courage to knock on their door and say, "Hi folks, I talk about your house to hundreds of people every week. Please will you let me inside?" Here, they can only open half of the vestibule side. That's something that they can do. Unfortunately, because of the work, they've got this barge here, so they're going to have to move that one over there off to the side, and we should be able to make our way through. Again, this is a federal water. Why on vestibules, if you're doing the work, you do tabs, right? You do in its upright position. One of the oldest. It's not active anymore. But this white building, the Hofko Shoe Polish building, was the last factory standing here in the 3rd Ward. The Hoffmans were a Jewish couple that escaped the Nazis during World War II and came here, took a family doll shoe polish recipe and turned it into a small white shoe polish empire for nurses. They would make it here, and they made it here in the 3rd Ward well into the 21st. So here, standing without any work being done on it, so I'm going to have to wait and see what will develop. This bridge, by the way, is one of the manned bridges, so you can join me in waving to our bridge operator there, if you would like. So this part of the river, a lot of the buildings in the 3rd Ward here on our port side are a little bit newer. They try to look like they belong in the 3rd Ward, though. This building coming up here, though, this long one, this is the Marine Terminal building, and it's actually from 1915.
Milwaukee School.
I applied there.
This is a 4-year university specializing in arts, architecture, graphics, photography, visual design, things like that. Now, it's pretty small as far as universities go. It's less than 1,000 students. But you get a chance to walk through the 3rd Ward, which we strongly recommend. You'll see that this our neighborhood has a lot of murals and sculptures, art galleries. I think my ad is owed a little bit of a debt on that front since it's located right here. And
Nice trout.
that's a heck of a catch right there, sir. Congratulations.
Put put that on your bucket list of culinary treats. Milwaukee River Coho salmon.
If you look here on our starboard side, you can see the 5th Ward, or the Walker's Point neighborhood. This is very similar to the 3rd Ward. It's a old industrial neighborhood that is being modernized and gentrified. But it's about 20 years behind the 3rd Ward, so it's still got some interesting older historic buildings that nobody's quite done something with. For example, that gray building with the black and white sign that says Wisconsin Cold Storage Co. there on our starboard, that is an old ice block storage facility from 1892. Before we had electric refrigeration, you used to have to buy blocks of ice and stick them in boxes to keep your food cold. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that building. They might convert it into something. They might keep it for secret underground raves. It caught fire on the roof a few weeks ago during one of those big storms, and you can see where its damage has been done, so that might influence things as well. Speaking of buildings that may get torn down, check out this big gray building coming up on our starboard side. This is a 1929 grain elevator used for storing wheat, barley, and hops for the Milwaukee brewing industry. The folks that own this building really want to tear it down to create a new mixed-use building called Harbor Yards. But they announced that about 5 years ago, and the only step they've taken towards accomplishing it is putting that sign up. So I kind of hope they give up and turn it into a fancy climbing wall. It's basically a bunker on stilts, so it's very expensive to tear down. If you look here on our port side, you can see this older metal bridge. This is what's called a swing bridge. It rotates at the center to connect to tracks on either side. It was built in 1915, and it was a major rail line back then. But if you look on either side, you'll notice that there's no tracks there anymore. These days, this bridge is mostly used by ducks, geese, and the occasional adventurous kayaker. But I did hear about a proposal once to turn it into a floating park, which I think would be really cool if logistically very complicated. It is a fascinating memorial to a more industrial era of Milwaukee. So ahead of us, the river splits into two. On our starboard side, we're going to be going by the Milwaukee Inner Harbor, which is part of Milwaukee's working waterfront. The Inner Harbor is a great place to see tugboats, barges, cargo ships, industrial storage, and cargo cranes. It's also where you pick up the Kinnickinnick River, the 3rd of the 3 rivers that make up the Milwaukee Waterway. It's also, fun fact, home to the School of Freshwater Sciences, the premier institute for studying Lake Michigan, its water quality, and its inhabitants here in the area. It's part of the UWM School of Freshwater School, which of course I'm an alumni of, so I'm a big fan. So ahead of us is Jones Island. The first thing you need to know about Jones Island is that it is, in fact, not an island. It is a peninsula. They still call it Jones Island, though. That's a little confusing. To fully understand this part of the Milwaukee River, there are 2 geographic facts you have to understand. Number 1 is that the actual Milwaukee lakefront was pretty much when it was created as part of the geological conditions to about early 20th century. It was a sheer drop, just a bluff that overlooked the water. It was deeply unsuitable for cargo traffic. Vessels would have a hard time unloading and loading cargo and passengers because it was just this sheer drop. So that's why the 3rd Ward was so important. The river was a lot lower to the ground, lower in the water, and thus easier to dock a ship on. The other thing is that what we're in right now is called the Straight Cut. This is not the original mouth of the Milwaukee River. The original mouth of the Milwaukee River was about a mile south of here at the other end of Jones Island. This did exist, but it was much smaller, more suitable for something like a canoe than a larger cargo ship. Vessels coming to Milwaukee in the 1830s and 40s would have to go around Jones Island to get to the 3rd Ward, which is where all the docks were. And Jones Island at the time, very undeveloped, and that meant that it was a swampy mess, and ships would often wreck trying to go around it. It was actually quite treacherous. Local businessmen grew pretty mad about the loss of money and time that this entailed, pulling those ships off the island. And so, in the early 1850s, Byron Kilborn, one of Milwaukee's earliest settlers and town founders, came up with a plan. See, Byron Kilborn never
Get him like 2 hours later, 3 hours later.
New mouth to the Milwaukee River. This did not work. the ship got stuck, it became something of an embarrassment, but it did draw a lot of attention to the larger idea of digging a new mouth to the Milwaukee River. And in 1857, mostly bolstered by local support, they finished what's called the Straight Cut, which is what we are in right now. This became the main access point for the Milwaukee River system, and eventually the old mouth of the Milwaukee River was entirely filled in, turning Jones Island into a peninsula and leaving this as the main access point for the Milwaukee River system.
That lighthouse, babe.
Yeah, babe.
So Jones Island is home to many different industrial facilities that play important roles. But of all the facilities here on Jones Island, I think my personal favorite is this one coming up here on our starboard side. This is Milwaukee's Jones Island wastewater treatment facility. See, Milwaukee really prides itself on being a good steward of Lake Michigan. So we try to clean as much water every single year, put it back into the lake, as we take in for our water needs every year. So we are a net neutral train on Lake Michigan. On a dry day like today, no rain, no water conditions, the wastewater cleaning facilities here in Milwaukee probably will clean about 150 million gallons a day. Put it all back into the lake. On a wetter day, rainier, during these crazy storms we had, to continue cleaning that so we can pumping our dirty water back into Lake Michigan. That's why I like it a lot. I love the lake. I love the idea that we're trying our best to take it back. And it's actually about 100 years old. We've had this facility for a really long time. So when I was a kid, my family took me to a lot of lighthouses, which probably explains a lot about me. And that's why it's important to get some of this lighthouse stuff that we see right. For example, this little red building coming up on our port side, this is not a lighthouse. It is a light tower. Lighthouse and housing attached to it. That's what makes a lighthouse like home. This never had any housing attached to it. It makes a light tower. It still fulfills a very similar role though, right? It lights up at night, it marks the mouth of the Milwaukee River. It's called the Pierhead. It was built in 1906 and it's still in service today. I will admit to all of you, the graffiti. Alright folks, so we're making our way into what's called the Milwaukee Outer Harbor. And as someone who spends a lot of time here on the water, right, I would like to share with you my favorite Great Lakes fun fact. But before I do, I have a question. How many Great Lakes have there ever been?
5.
5 is the common wisdom, right? But what if I were to tell you the answer was 4? See,
Here in
north of here is the Straits of Mackinac. They are a massive body of water that connects us to Lake Huron. Really, it is one contiguous body of water, Lake Michigan-Huron. If we take this into account, this is the largest lake by surface area in the world and the 4th largest by volume. Don't worry, Lake Superior fans, you still got to speak in that regard. So, I'll ask the question again. How many Great Lakes have there ever been? 4. Some of you said 4, some of you stick to your guns and said 5, but what if I told you the answer was 6? In 1998, the Clinton administration designated Lake Champlain as the 6th Great Lake. This was widely viewed as a bad idea. See, I didn't know where Lake Champlain was. I had to look it up. It's the western part of Vermont, and it is much smaller than the other Great Lakes. Midwestern politicians hated this. Not only is it a reputation thing, obviously Lake Champlain is much smaller than the other Great Lakes, but it's also a funding thing. There are certain grants that are only available in 2 Great Lakes areas, and if you add a 6th Great Lake, it dilutes the amount of money available to everyone. This lasted for 5 weeks before it was revoked, and so at the end of the day, the answer to the question is a bit of a trick, right? You can pick which one of those answers you like, make that your answer, see if it comes up again, and they're all a little bit technically correct, which, as I learned from television, is the best type of. I also noticed that there is a wall across the Milwaukee Harbor. This is the Milwaukee Break Wall. The Milwaukee Break Wall started its construction in the 1970s, and it's here to break waves. See, today, it's not so bad, right? Not no waves, but I've seen 4, 5, 6, and even 20-foot tall waves hit Milwaukee's harbor. Remember, I emphasized how important commercial shipping was for the city. It was the lifeblood of Milwaukee's commerce throughout the entire 19th century. A lot of Milwaukee's earliest immigrants and goods came and went via the river and the lake. And this break wall, therefore, played a really important role in stabilizing the outer harbor. You want to be able to move ships in and out at all times. And, well, the break wall is still here, even though we don't see quite as much commercial shipping traffic as we used to. We're happy to have it. It's about 3 miles long, and there are 3 gaps in it. A north gap, a central gap, which is where we're at now, and then the south gap further down. You may also notice that there is a small white house perched here on the tip of the break wall. That's my house. I live there. The commute is brutal and the neighbors are questionable, but honestly, the price is right, especially in this economy. For real though, that's Breakwater Lighthouse. Breakwater Lighthouse was built in 1926, and it was a proper lighthouse.
I thought it was his actual house.
Year-round that guided vessels through the wall into Milwaukee's harbor. Now, it remained as a manned station until 1965, when it was automated by running a cable along the bottom of the harbor, which, by the way, there is still a cable there now. The light at the top of this building is still in service, the Coast Guard still looks after it, and it still turns on and off. The rest of the building, though, where the lighthouse keepers lived, not so useful anymore, which is why 12 years ago, the Coast Guard gave it to a private nonprofit under the terms that they make it accessible to the public in some fashion. So far, what they've done with it is absolutely nothing. It has been 12 years. There's a lot of bold talk back when it was first handed over, but there was an article in the newspaper last year essentially saying what gives, and the leader of the project could not be reached for comment. I think my favorite crazy story is that it was going to get turned into a bed and breakfast. Can you imagine? It'd tip your Jimmy John's driver an awful lot to come out of his own thing. So, while we're here by the mouth of the break wall, here by the, in any sort of way by the open lake, we show a little caution as we move throughout the vessel. Use railings and stairs, because we're going to take a little break here. Let you folks take some pictures here on the Vista King, get some refreshments from our steward Ashley down below, or ask me questions, because we're, like I said, we're going to take that break. But if you like what you heard so far, don't worry, folks, you haven't heard the last of it.
If you want to take a picture.
Right through this park. I've spent a lot of time here. What a nice evening strolling through, listening to music, you know, stopping at the kite shop, which also serves hot dogs. But there's a lot of interesting things located here in the park. One of my personal favorites, here is this little boatyard on our starboard. This is the Milwaukee Community Sailing Center, and they're also headquartered in that big white building with the curved metal roof there. A Korean War supply vessel that today is the research vessel for the School of Freshwater Sciences. Remember I mentioned them a little bit earlier? That is the all-year research vessel. While it may look a little on the smaller side, they pack a lot of science for studying everything from water quality to the inhabitants to chemistry. They can launch scuba divers. They are a pretty capable vessel, and so they dock inside the inner harbor. We don't always get a chance to see them out there, though I did once get an opportunity to go inside and take a little tour, and so it was pretty neat to see that there. Can't say for sure what they're up to, but there's a lot of things to keep an eye on for Lake Michigan, so I'm sure they're doing something. Veterans Park on our starboard side, by the way, wasn't always here. The original coast of Lake Michigan, as you may recall I mentioned, was a sheer drop, a bluff that overlooked the water. They added this area here. It's artificial, it's waste dirt and soil. Much of our lakefront is parks and beaches and public spaces. So ahead of us is downtown Milwaukee. See that tall, shiny tower right there in the center of it all? That's the Northwestern Mutual building. Built in 2017, it is 550 feet tall, and it is the second tallest building in all of Wisconsin, 550 feet. This is what's called a modernist style building. Modernist style architecture is all about keeping the past in the past and creating something new and singular, as you place 1957 by a man named Eero Saarinen. Saarinen was a Finnish-American architect, most famous for building the St. Louis Arch. Now, he said he was trying to make it abstractly resemble a World War II military pillbox overlooking the lake here. And like a lot of things in architecture, this is more of a suggestion than, an exact copy. But I think he did a pretty great job in sort of suggesting it without making it too on the nose. If you look behind the Milwaukee, this is the U.S. Bank building. Built 1973 as the first Wisconsin back then, and it's 601 feet tall. It is the tallest building in Wisconsin. I know it doesn't look taller than the others, but that's an optical illusion. It's just further inland. There's an urban legend about this building that states that it has a secret agreement with the city of Milwaukee that states that no building can be taller than theirs. I have no idea if that's true, but I did have a guy on board the boat swear that it was, and said that he worked on the Northwestern Mutual building, which is how he knew. Make of that what you will. Folks, it's kind of odd that the tallest building in Wisconsin, even after the buildings, was built in 1896. It was the Commerce Building back then. It was built in what's called Italianate style, which means that it was inspired by sort of the Italian Renaissance, very loosely. If you look at the upper level where the arches and the carvings are, you can see some of it. That's why today it's known as the Renaissance Building. It carries on the various rules that the Third Ward has undertaken here in the 21st century. High-rise building, just a couple of years old. There's a lot of those in Milwaukee along the various waterways. It's a bold choice, I think. Obviously, it doesn't look like anything else in the Third Ward, but I think they did that to drive conversation, right? We're talking about it right now. We're considering, what does it look like? How does it work? And so we'll see how it develops. It's supposed to be something retail on the lower level. It was empty for a long time, but they're building there now, so something's happening. And it wasn't like there was a historic building there that they tore down. There was a parking lot there. It was kind of cheap parking though, so I'm not sure how I feel about that. Here on our port side, this construction site is going to be the headquarters for the Crumb Dog Food Company, as well as a dog-friendly restaurant and brewery. They also sponsor the dog park right next door. Also on our starboard is the rehabilitation of the park continues right across from our Fuller's Market. Next to that, there's a pickleball court, and of course next to that, the Milwaukee River Walk Commons, where they hold free concerts. Milwaukee really prides itself on bringing people to downtown, to special events, and this is the current focus on development, and so I'm looking forward to being able to talk about it here in the tour as things get more and more developed and popular. So you look at both your port and starboard side, you can see parking lots built here in parking lot style. Classic parking lot style, of course. They date back to the 1970s, an era when very few people wanted to build much of anything along the Milwaukee River because there's something you can spend time in, but not a lot of time. You don't have to spend a lot of time there. I have but one request for the folks in charge of these parking lots. Can we get some color on them? Like some murals or some abstracts or some even colorful lines or something? Because I think that would really spruce up this part of the river. So I briefly mentioned Byron Kilgore, right? He's one of the early founders of Milwaukee's early settlements. And we mentioned that his settlement was up by our parking lot. On our starboard side now, this is roughly where Juneautown was created, which is the first permanent settlement in the area, came in 1818. It was founded by a couple named Solomon and Josette Juneau. They were the first Milwaukee power couple in the area. Juneau had been a fur trapper, a businessman, and a trader, and he worked for Josette's father, who was the big trade baron youth. They really made the city what it was. Josette held the first mass. She helped her husband build relationships with the Native American tribes. Solomon was the first mayor of Milwaukee. He donated land to build civic buildings. And one of Juneau's employees was also quite notable. Joe Oliver is the first recorded African American here in Milwaukee. Is also the first African American to vote in the state of Wisconsin. It wasn't even a state back then; it was a territory. In the mid-1830s, the first election was held here in Milwaukee. Only 39 people voted. About half of them for themselves, for the position they wanted. And of those 39, Joe Oliver was one of them. He shouldn't have been allowed, according to the laws at the time, but he just kind of went for it. It was a territory, things were a little chaotic, crazy, and he did so quite successfully. It would be over 30 years until African American men could vote here in Wisconsin later, so real trailblazer in that regard. He's also a former wake sailor, which is, I think, very appropriate for right now. So if you look at our starboard side, at the top of the stairs, you're going to see a statue of a man giving 2 thumbs up. That is the Bronze Fonz. The Fonz is a character from a show called Happy Days, old sitcom of the 70s and 80s, wildly popular in its era. And the Fonz is probably one of its most iconic and famous characters, one of the most iconic characters of, well, sitcom history. He's doing his trademark cool guy thumbs up, and he's what's called a greaser, which means that he's a cool, tough biker. A very classic American archetype, very appropriate for the area, considering Harley-Davidson is one of the main companies that operates here in Milwaukee. It has since 1902. The reason his statue is here in Milwaukee, biker credentials aside, is simple. We are the coolest, slickest, toughest city, and he is the coolest, slickest, toughest character. Also, the show is set here, which is a much more important reason. There are only 4 television shows that I am aware of that have any sort of significant presence here in Milwaukee, having been set here. Those 4 shows are Happy Days, its spin-off Laverne and Shirley, a spy thriller called Patriot from 2011 has its first season, partially set here in Milwaukee, and of course the show Dahmer. Jeffrey.
Yep.
So if you look here, this bridge has 4 towers. There is bridge controls in one of them, but there's nobody there. This is a remotely operated bridge. The other 3 towers are used for storage. And the reason there are 4 towers is simple. Symmetry. They just wanted it to be perfectly balanced, as all things should be. On our starboard is the 1968 Performing Arts Center, built by Chicago architect and sailor Harry Weiss. It is a brutalist building, which means it's stark and uncompromising, with flat surfaces, sharp corners, and blocky angles. But despite its imposing facade, it's a great place to see a musical or a ballet. Seen everything from Phantom of the Opera to Beetlejuice to Hadestown there, if you're sensing sort of a kind of gothy theme there, that's quite intentional. The mural underneath, it was painted earlier this year. It's part of an ongoing Riverwalk beautification project. This is the most recent, though there is others. If you look across the river when we dock, on the tower, another mural is there as part of the same series. On our port side is Tower Marquette Park. It's named after Brother Jacques Marquette, Jesuit priest, missionary, and explorer. He and his two companions camped at this very spot in 1674, and they were the first Europeans to ever come to this area. Marquette University is named after him. The building there is the County Historic Society, but it's actually an old bank building. So, you look to share with you. On the other hand, it's the oldest bridge we go under on our tour today. And so, because it's remotely operated, you can be a little finicky. I say this as we sit here, waiting for it to open. But bascule bridges are my favorite type of bridge, which is how you know I'm a big nerd. Because I have a favorite. There we go. So, obviously, I talked a little bit about some of these older historic buildings here on our port side. There's some of them also a little bit on our starboard as well, but the ones that are most famous for it is this little stretch here on our port. There's a lot of restaurants and bars that have tried to keep a little bit of a German theme. On our starboard, however, this construction site, I've been watching this day by day as the season goes on. This is going to be the Edison when it's completed. A 32-story tall timber frame building, the tallest in the world. We're kind of here between old and new, and I think this is a good place to kind of wrap it up. I want to thank you guys for joining us today on this absolutely beautiful Thursday. I want to thank Captain Nick and the pilot house for steering us right, Senior Deckhand Ross for making sure things were smooth, and Stuart Ashley for making sure we stay refreshed. If you have a tab, you should probably close it. Tips are always appreciated. If you have any questions,